So watch out what you're saying now.
Uh-oh.
Oh. So let's see who else here. Corey's here and Sylvia's here. Ruth is here. iPhone is here. Pam is here. Carol. But Aoife is going by the name of user right now. And Cheryl's here. All right. Anybody else in this? Picture of Pam's room is there, but iPhone, tell me your name again. The one who says iPhone is the name underneath. Okay. That's you smiling. Yes, that's you with the ponytail. What's your name? Okay. Can't get that. Third box down. Two left row from the left. Everybody's box is not the same. All right. 18. Let's give it a few more minutes. Let's just see what else is happening. We're gonna start with a little bit of quiet time. So if you why don't we just do that now? We just can drop in right now. So I'm just interested to see when you drop in before I start offering suggestions that you just use any skills that you've learned so far, or anything you've known from before, or however it is that you begin to turn your attention to the interior life of your organism. And offering it some self-regulation, which means that you feel that breath is serving you, it's bringing you nourishment, you're in connection with the relationship of body and breath. And you're in more direct experience of the breathing process.
I have used Buteyko so much.
Hold on a second, because let's just keep it quiet until we finish the meditation. Then we'll
okay.
Yeah. Thank you. So remember, mostly we're looking for the felt sense, that we have a direct experience of the felt sense of the movement of air and the movement of breath, and the movement of body in relationship to the movement of breath. And direct experience. Remembering to let that bottom of your exhale take you down into the support underneath your feet and your back and your bottom, wherever you're sitting. Offering your body a possibility of support, so any tensions that you may be holding on that have been not in your noticing field can just soften and relax. And so the inhale can be a little more gentle, less effortful, because some of the tension is out. And a couple of places that you can look to soften. And start with the eyes. There are bones in the socket underneath your eyes if you're sitting. Just being curious about how do I let my eye tension just release to let the bones underneath my eyes carry the weight of my eyes. And see if that doesn't release any looking or trying to see anything. And like everything else we do, if you feel a shift there, you want to return to the relationship of body and breath and see if there's a change in effort, size of how much breath you may need now as opposed to when your eyes were tense. And perhaps needing a little less inhale because you're not feeding the tension that may have been in your eyes if you were able to release them. And below that, we have the tongue at the roof of the mouth, which can also offer a platform to let some of the upper head tension just ease down a little bit. If you have a relationship with the support, see if there's a way that the shoulders can be more in relationship to the support. So if you feel any tensions in the shoulders, it's not like you're trying to make them go down, but once they have support underneath them, they may say, oh, you can let go a little bit. You may feel your scapulas drop in the back. And all of this may allow the spine to come into a little bit more awareness, a little more relief in your awareness as a support that keeps you erect and reaches right down to the tailbone where you're sitting. And hopefully allowing the whole upper torso to be a little bit more elastic, opening easy for inhale, softening easy for exhale. With all of that, wondering, just checking in, is the breath opening from a lower down place, perhaps? Maybe it moved you out of your chest if you were chest breathing. A little more response in your belly and low back. These are suggestions. And the primary function of breathing is for nourishment. So as we pass through these different ways of checking in with ourselves, is there some shift in you in terms of being able to receive a sense of well-being or nourishment, or release of some tension, or softening of some of the mind? And just taking a scan around your body, thinking, where else may I want to soften? And bringing your attention there, just bringing that place into your awareness. And keeping it there while you inhale and exhale, keeping your awareness in that location. Noticing how the combination of awareness and breath and attention has the potential to create a shift, one in your favor. Helping you find some pleasure in the process of breathing. And so over the course of these 3 weeks, we're just checking with yourself. Are you able to notice more in the internal realm? Getting more keen on, yeah, I feel more of this process, which tells me that I'm in more of my direct experience. The tracking of sensation in the body is the body's language. And so we're beginning to learn that language by feeling sensations, even if we can't name them. And tracking how they move around the body. So giving yourself credit for an increase in attention and feeling, internal feeling. There's no perfection here. It's an ongoing process. We're not trying to make breathing perfect, just being in touch with it. And taking your time as we make a transition like we've done before, tuning into a little bit more of our senses that are tracking the outside world to make this transition from inside to outside. You want to see, just feel into and find a taste in your mouth right now. Use the sense of taste to track a taste. And 2 smells. See if you can find 2 smells that are traveling around you in the atmosphere. Even if you can't find them, just noticing how, when you bring your attention to smelling, you're waking up that sense. And 3 sounds. The whir of the computer, the rubbing of your hands together, moving of a fan, noises in your house, sounds in your house. And opening up your skin to feel 4 ways that your skin is tracking itself being touched. You can use your own hands to increase the touch, or feel your clothes on your body, the air in the room. Just opening up the sense of touch. And then as you gently begin to take sips of light with your eyes, you're looking for 5 things in the visual field, letting your eyes land on something in your visual field and closing them again. All of these things are producing sensations in your body. That's what the senses do. Taking a look-see, then closing your eyes and feeling, and then opening again. Things that please you, perhaps. And then a little bit of a wiggle, a little bit of a rock here and there, just kind of waking up the movement. So you're not so sitting so still, just shaking all of that out. Maybe shake your hands a little bit, shake your feet a little bit. Maybe a little vocalization. Yum, 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 yum. And you're all muted, so if you want to come back and talk, we're going to have to unmute. Would love to have heard those sounds. So great. Welcome again today, our 3rd session. Good to see you all. Smiling faces. So I thought we'd check in a little bit. I'm kind of curious myself to see what's happening in your interior life, how you're using it, what you're learning, what do you think is applicable, what you want to know more about. And when you, the reason I want to do that both is to hear from you, but I want all of us to hear from each other. So if there's something that you're tracking that nobody else is tracking, we go, oh, wow, I could probably take a look at that. So maybe you will be the teachers now while I'll sit and listen to you and talk about what you may be noticing. And so you'll have to unmute yourself. I'm not going to go in order. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. We'll just see who wants to maybe put a comment or 2 in the room before we go on.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, Corey. Good morning.
Good morning. Something I'm noticing is that my jaw has the tendency when I come into a relaxed space, and even during that time right now while we were sitting, it has the tendency to drop. And that feels comfortable. And I'm just curious about it, and I'm wondering, I know, I think I remember from last time you were talking about maybe kind of gently bringing the teeth together, not clenching, but just kind of up and closed is maybe a more optimal way to increase flow of breath. And so I'm just curious about this. I mean, it's not a full open, but it's a lips closed, kind of mouth, jaw, lower jaw drop.
Well, I guess it depends how much of it's dropping. You know, it's like I demonstrated last time. If I really let it open, you can really see, you know, this. But if I just, they're sort of close together, a few millimeters apart, that really works well enough. Okay. And I'm going to do a little something on the lips today that may help that, actually. Okay. But I'll hold it off on it just now. So thanks. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. If you look in the mirror and you look like you're 100 years old when you drop your jaw, you know you're dropping it too far. Let's see what it looks like, Corey. And let's see what it looks like if you bring your teeth a little closer together. So why don't you look at that in the screen? Can you see yourself in the screen? And now bring them together. You see a little more of a smile when you bring them together? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm also noticing a little more tendency for support and alignment for my head as I bring the jaw up just a little bit.
Great. So there's your motivation to keep the teeth a little closer together.
Thanks.
Okay. All right.
This is
I
Barb.
have a,
Hey, Barb.
I'm noticing that how much less breath it really takes to be fulfilled. You know, like have feelings of enough air is a lot less.
Well, that's great. And
Yeah.
I like the word fulfilled, because
Okay.
you're fulfilled by less. So less is more fulfilling than
Yeah.
more. That's really that's a
Mhm.
nice piece. You know, we use the word nourishment, and fulfillment is really nice, because this is really I'm just saying for myself, and saying I landed on the word nourishment this week more significantly because I really noticed, oh my God, I don't think I ever had a direct experience of feeling nourished. I know I look for things, I have food, and I think intellectually, yes, my relationship is nourishing, but I really had I thought, oh my goodness, I've been talking about nourishment for a long time, but only from an intellectual place. I really felt in my body that it was really satisfied and nourished.
Mhm.
So I'm just saying that because it's just an interesting piece. It is certainly, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but in my co-teacher in Hawaii, we talk about the 4 things that babies need to have a good survival rate and to be, really feel safe. It's support, nourishment, protection, and limits. And so the breath offers support when we let ourselves land on gravity, and when we're fulfilled and we feel nourished, we're nourishing ourselves, which is a really very powerful thing for us to do, and not be looking outside to get that kind of nourishment that is so biologically necessary. And by also the way we're breathing and recognizing that we can only get so much capacity, which is enough, there is our limitation. And we protect ourselves by staying within the limits, so not to go beyond and make ourselves too vulnerable, be going beyond our limits.
Mhm.
So I'm just putting that out about all these words that we talk about: fulfillment and nourishment and protection. They do have a felt sense in the body where we register a direct experience of those things.
Right.
So that's why the interior life is so important, because that's where that direct experience shows up. It doesn't show up outside the body, it shows up inside the body. Yeah, great. Thank you, Barb, for that fulfilling conversation. Anybody else? Yeah, Cheryl. I figured I'd hear from you. I love hearing from you.
I don't want to hog up all the time, but
That's all right.
this week, so I've been trying to be more conscious of how I'm breathing, and I had a really nice experience. I was watering some new grass area with a bucket because I didn't have a hose, and I had to go when you live near a lake, and I was getting buckets of water out, so it was quite a long, heavy task. But I thought, well, this is really going back to the old ways of doing things. That then I noticed I was mouth breathing and my throat was getting sore. I thought, oh, I didn't breathe through my nose. And I realized the amount of air that I was taking in, it wasn't enough. I'd overexerted myself. So I sat down and really focused on, I'm just gonna nose breathe. And my heart was pounding. I suddenly realized how hard my heart was beating, which I hadn't noticed until I started breathing through my nose.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, I need to rest. I forget about resting, not overdoing it. And I overdo it all the time, like spraining things and hurting my back and hurting my knees. So that brought me into a better awareness of letting my body rest when it needs to rest. And while I was sitting there and I could feel my heart calming down, I also felt my thoughts were just starting to become more, I don't know what the word is other than to say just accepting of where I was. I wasn't trying to fight with things or overthink things. So I felt, I don't know why, but the breathing, focusing on the breathing helped me have an awareness. I have trouble putting words to.
No, well, it's
good.
What you're saying is fascinating, in the fact that you noticed you were mouth breathing, and mouth breathing triggers the fight or flight response, which triggers a very fast and hard heartbeat. It is appropriate to have the heart do that. Because if you were running from a real threat, you want that heart pumping as hard as it can to get the blood around as fast and the oxygen as fast as you can. Now the question is it really necessary for me to be in this kind of fight or flight stage when I'm just hauling water? Or can I do that and pace myself according to my ability to be able to breathe in a way that really nourishes me and work at that pace and not at some idea of what the pace is? So, and again, this other thing that I think is a beautiful thing that you said is we don't notice these things about what our body is doing until we turn our attention to the body, and nose breathing immediately, if we're paying attention to the movement of it, immediately puts us in touch with the internal world. And then we can see what's really appropriate and we can make a better choice in that moment. So good, great noticing. And I can really relate to that piece about hurting yourself. My manic behavior for many, many years caused me a lot of pain. And it used to be that, and I knew I was really in a little trouble when I started noticing, oh no, I just banged my head again, and yet again, and again, and again. So how much more do I need to bang my head before I notice somehow I need to slow down?
Yeah.
No,
so I'll get it eventually.
yeah. Well, it's a learning process, and that doesn't happen overnight. You know, it's amazing to me because I worked with 11 dentists yesterday in Seattle. Every one of them a mouth breather, and they're working on people's mouths. So they're looking at revamping their whole practice to include breathing training in it because they know they need it themselves. But you'd think they'd know. They don't.
Yeah.
It's sort of like respiratory doctors know very little about breathing. But anyway.
Yeah, not many people do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
But all of you do now. Yay.
Thanks for teaching us.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Hi. Yes.
Hey, hi. Tell me your name.
Claudia.
Claudia. Good. We got that now. Not iPhone. I get it.
Oh, okay. It doesn't come through, huh? On the Zoom?
No.
I teach children, and I teach children how to speak English.
Mm.
And so I've noticed, I've been trying to nose breathe and talk. Doesn't always work.
No, not always.
But when I'm very conscious doing it with my students, it gives them time to absorb the information way better and reduces their anxiety by a lot. So that's been really valuable, hard to practice, but very valuable. Thank you.
Oh yeah, just so pleased to hear that. That's a great thing that the children can have less anxiety and learn about their learning because they can absorb more. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for taking it on. Really appreciate that.
Robert, I have a question.
Yeah, Sylvia, hi.
Hi. Could you speak up more a little bit about the signature breathing you mentioned? That we all have a signature breathing pattern.
Yeah. Breath is built on context and circumstance. And so I'm just going to use my own example. I grew up in a very difficult household, abuse, alcohol. So I was on edge all the time. I was defended. I was closed down completely. I made a comment to myself very early in my age. I am going to withdraw all my energy from this family and go internal, harden my skin so I will not be affected by them, and make myself vulnerable in any way so that I can get more hurt than I'm already being hurt. So when I started working on the breathing piece, what did I find? But a very tight breathing rhythm. I had withdrawn so much that there wasn't much room to breathe. I was kind of breathing like right in here, and incredibly fast because I was incredibly frightened internally. So my breathing, if I checked into the rhythm, the signature of my breath was fear-based and withdrawn, and which was my behavior as well, defensive and withdrawn. So my breathing was like that. So when I began to open it up and shift the breathing signature, you know, vulnerabilities happened, and I had to check, you know, check that I was safe and all kinds of things that I had to manage. But if I'm not careful and I'm not paying attention, it'll go right back to that. It'll just go right back to being fast and breathing small. And so that's why I check in with the internal world. I just close my mouth. Okay, I don't have to live in that signature. There's something else. There's an alternative to it. So it patterns itself. Another example would be a woman I had in a class, and this happened to her later in life. She was taking care of her grandmother, and her grandmother had emphysema. And she was living and sleeping in the same room with her grandmother for years. And guess what? Her breathing pattern looked like she had emphysema. She was gasping, you know, like her grandmother was, but that wasn't her breathing. That's a signature she developed based on circumstance.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's all like that, you know. And indigenous people who are outside, safe and comfortable, they're not dealing with breathing, you know. I know that, and that's, I think I told this story too, just to end with stories about myself. I think I might have mentioned that I was camping in the Amazon, and I was just, you know, going about, and all of a sudden, I just took a breath that I had never taken before. And I thought, oh my goodness, I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought, there's nothing wrong with me. It's the context that I'm trying to live in that makes my breathing much more difficult. So I thought, I have the capacity to breathe. I just have to shift the context. So the context in this particular case was my mind telling me there was something wrong with me and I couldn't breathe well and things like that. And that was not the truth. So I began to shift it. So it's like Cheryl was just saying, when she checked in, she was breathing like she was like something was threatening. So the breath always has a message for us. And I think we recognize that too when we're with people who feel really relaxed and calm, and they're breathing in a way that we don't even register it, and they're relaxed inside of themselves, they're embodied and they're quiet and they're breathing well. We feel safe around them. We can relax ourselves. We get near somebody who's really anxious and we can feel that vibration and they're breathing in a way that's anxious. We start to feel like we're anxious. Yeah, Carrie shaking your head. Yeah, so, you know, that's how we begin to make choices about what's really good for us and what's really healthy for us. What context do we want to put ourselves in? You know, it's sort of like the biggest message we received was from George Floyd. I can't breathe. You're suffocating me. You're all over me. You've got your knee in my back. Is that not a metaphor for what really feels like what's going on, whether it's the culture or whether it's the environment? We're being pressed in on tremendously. I hate to be negative about it, but we are. Does that help, Sylvia?
Yes, thank you.
I predict that, you know, many years down the line, and Tibetan doctors do this now, we won't even be doing blood tests. We'll be doing breathing tests. The whole metabolic chemistry template is in our breath. And so we begin to learn how to analyze what's going on in our breathing. We'll see that we'll be able to analyze the internal health of the body based on what's in the chemistry. It's in the breath itself. They're doing that now in some cases. There's in Washington, the University of Washington, they have an app for opiate users and heroin addicts, and it's on their phone. If they leave their phone on, the phone is tracking their breathing. If they stop breathing, the phone automatically calls 911. So we're headed in that direction. Yeah, I saw another hand up. Yeah, Per. Hi.
Hi. Is this a okay time for a general question about something, or is it more for?
No.
Okay, so what I'd love to hear a little refresher about is something that you've told me about many years ago, and I've heard about that this imbalance that can happen between oxygen and CO2 in the exchange, and I'd love to just get a little reminder of that if that would be a good time for that now.
It is. You know, Per, I'm going to write it down here. It's on my list. I'm going to show some slides today, and that's the first slide up.
Great, thank you.
So just before we go a little more check-in, and then we'll go to that. Yeah, Lucia, you're muted.
No, I remembered.
Good.
Well, I can't remember in one workshop, and don't tell me the way you presented it because I've experimented 2 ways with Saha. One starting with Sa from the front and Ha from the back. And the other way, I couldn't remember which way you suggested. So I've been experimenting with both ways. And it's interesting how different they are. But, well, do tell me, which, if you remember, is there a certain way that you...
Well, there are many ways to pay attention to breathing. There are many dynamics to pay attention. But if you want to pay attention to the microcosmic orbit and the way breath travels, it comes up the back and down the front.
Okay, up the back. Yeah, well, I liked it the other way too.
That's all right.
Because I thought, well, I'm just going to be curious and see, because sometimes that's what I thought. But sometimes I like to breathe in through the front and let it just kind of roll like a wave down the back and open up the backbone. And sometimes it might feel like fighting, breathing up the back and then just, anyway, I've been experimenting with that as I walk, and it's fun. It's just a different way to think of it.
Yeah. And then so many ways to pay attention.
Yeah. So,
good, thanks. Thanks for
and the breathing pattern, I notice how much I can go into like startle when something comes up. So.
I love, you and I have a little bit of information about birth, and we talked about it last time too. And I just think the startle is part of the same thing.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a model of an ant who would go when something came in. So.
Okay. Yeah, we do pattern our breathing usually after the pattern of the mother. I mean, we're just kind of lying on their chest and mother's breathing, and we're just going to learn mother's breathing pattern. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're good mimics. All right, before I show some slides, unless there's another voice wants to be heard, I appreciate that you all are engaging. That's what I wanted to see, that there's practice going on, there's attention being paid, and I appreciate that. So here's a little something that I been playing with for a while and then took on really seriously since we've been doing the tongue work. Did I show you pictures of the tongue and up at the roof of the mouth in this class yet so far? Yeah. So here's I call this living in the kiss. Okay. So I won't tell you what's going to happen. You will just see what's going to happen. So you're in a good sitting position. And we're talking about the tongue being at the roof of the mouth, but the tongue is a really wet part of our body. It's wet. It's primordial too. It's been around a really long time. It doesn't have any bones in it. It kind of does its dance in a zillion different ways. We can play with it in a zillion different ways. But the instruction for having the tongue up in the roof of the mouth, and what Corey said about the teeth being closed, is the lips are meant to be closed. But how do we invite the lips to be closed in a way that sets up the system for an incredible possibility to soften? So what I'm going to ask you to do in your position is to just gently lick your lips, wet them. And when you bring them together and feeling into the surface tension of the water between them. That gently, that they're touching, that you don't hardly even feel the lips themselves, but just the wetness between the upper and the lower lip. And then slide that tongue up to the roof of the mouth and feel the difference perhaps in the texture of the tongue and the ease that it can bring to get it up there. And what happens in the rest of your body as you just hang out in the kiss? And it's always a good idea, if you want to take a comparison, is to press them a little bit together, like you might do if you weren't being more cautious about how they come together, and feel the difference in the overall skin body tension, and then just in the wetness. And of course, how you breathe while you're in the kiss. If they dry out, wet them again. You may notice a little bit more saliva generating, which is really a good thing for your teeth. And your breath, the smell of your breath. And, with a cursory glance, so that it doesn't feel like too much, just tap into the sensuality that lives in your body, your sensorium. Does it increase a sense of the sensing nature of you? Potential to be curious through your senses. Is there a different way that you open for breath when your lips are in the kiss? Is there a difference in the way the exhale slides out when you're in the kiss? Is there a difference around your heart space and the feeling out into the world from your heart? And just being curious too, as you stay in the kiss, just about sound and smell. Does those senses, now that you would look for them like we did earlier, feel a little bit more attuned? And is there a potential that their senses are a little bit more attuned, that you actually feel when you're in these attuned senses that there may be a sense of a presence in this moment, possibilities? Or does the whole thing freak you out? Okay, take another minute with this and see how that goes. We are wet bodies after all. So having this wetness be awake in us reminds us that we are fluid creatures, hopefully. All right. Letting your eyes drift open when you're ready, and you could stay in the kiss the whole rest of the class and the rest of your life if you'd like. It's been delicious for me for over a week now. How was that? Was that good? Barb, you had a question or a comment? Thank you, Cheryl. Barb, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh, okay.
I had another comment.
There.
Yeah, I was noticing that when I wet my lips and felt it that way, it something happened with my neck. Like there was a lengthening in the back of my neck when I tuned into that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And then that made me also think about this other thing that you've been suggesting of bringing the tongue kind of up toward the upper part of the palate.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been playing with that a little bit, but I have found that to be difficult because I feel like I have a hard time doing it without like pressing the tongue consciously up.
Mm-hmm.
But with this kind of awareness that you just suggested, it was like I could feel the tongue moving up in that portion of the palate that's just above the teeth, but not all the way down in the dome up there. But it felt like there was a step toward moving, letting that tongue kind of have that contact with the upper palate a little bit. It felt easier and more organic, more relaxed.
Yeah, great. That's my experience too. I think with all that extra saliva, it makes the tongue wetter. So then we're also sort of living in the kiss between the tongue and the upper palate rather than pushing it up there. That's my experience. And it's also my experience that it releases the back of my head. I had the same experience.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Win.
I just wanted to say that with all the smoke and the worries, I have never used Buteyko more.
Good.
It's been a constant with me, and I'm so grateful for learning it with you.
I'm glad, Win. I'm glad you got to say that. I'm sorry I had to cut you off earlier, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank
great.
you.
And I will be offering a 5-week Buteyko class on Sunday starting in October, strictly Buteyko.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. You'll all get an email on that. So, Carrie, I'm going to call on you. Did you like that, Carrie?
Sure. You want to call on me? Yeah, it's been an interesting week playing with this. And it's gotten easier, and there's a profoundness in it that is changing something, and I think in some radical patterns. What I had noticed and what I had written to you was that I was really having trouble for the last couple of months, as you and Bobby were really emphasizing, feeling the weight on the exhale. Mm-hmm. and the movement towards ground, and I couldn't. The more I tuned into it, the more I felt that literally on my exhale, everything kind of wrapped in, like I could feel a tension in the periosteum around my bones. And part of my history is a lot of muscle tendon problems. When we did this in class, it was like the field held me and I was able to do it, and it felt great. And I tried to do it on my own for the next couple of days, and I literally started to panic. And then I slowed my breath, and I found that my posture was critical. My neck needed to be in the proper alignment. And in the process, it's become much simpler. And I can actually feel the lift with the inhale and the descent with the exhale now pretty clearly. Sometimes I have to pay a little more closer attention, and that's fine, learning process. But I also feel like there's shifts happening kind of like through my whole cranial sacral system. There's much less tension at the occipital base, which is a chronic place for me. I feel like my sacrum and my coccyx especially have descended into a much fuller sense of flexion. And I feel like my whole cranial bit, my whole cranium relaxes in such relaxes maybe for the first time when my tongue is lifted, and I'll just use the word profound again because it feels like it is. I feel like it has the potential to make some really radical changes in the way I am in the world and the way I am in my own body.
Mhm.
So it's been a challenge and a rewarding one.
Yeah, thank you. It just really speaks to process.
Yeah.
And practice. I'm glad, happy for you. That's true. What's happening?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. I'm going to move on to some slides unless anybody else wants to talk about the KISS. Yeah, Michelle.
I'm unmuted, but can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, we can.
Sorry. Okay. We were just playing with the lips, the kiss, and the teeth. I missed last week and I haven't listened yet to that recording, but I feel that I don't have enough room with the way my teeth are and my tongue. It's like either the lips open and then I think about the tongue on the roof and then the tongue goes up and it's like either or, but maybe I just need to keep practicing.
Yeah, and maybe there's some work needs to be done with somebody who's professional about arranging tongue and teeth and mouth, because your tongue may be too big for your mouth. That does happen for some people.
My dentist has said I need my teeth, like my bite changed. Is that the kind of work you mean?
Yeah, that's where the dentists go to manipulating and moving teeth around, and where an oral facial myofunctional therapist will teach you how to use your tongue properly over time, so the tongue placement itself will start to shift the bite.
What's that kind of therapist?
Oral facial myofunction.
Oral facial
myofunctional therapy for the mouth. Yeah. All right. So let's keep this down. I'm going to put up a couple of slides so we can actually answer Pear's question. And give a thing, then we'll do some more exploring. All right, you see our beautiful model here demonstrating the airway and right into the back of her lungs. We've seen this picture before, but maybe you haven't, maybe I haven't shown it. But then remember, this picture is this is a real woman. She's alive. We're seeing her lungs in live time. And a beautiful picture of how much of the lung is in the back of the body. She's got heart in front, got other things in the front, but almost like wings back there. Yeah, our flotation devices, if you will. We carry them inside of ourselves. Nice, huh? So I hope that you've been doing this. I just wanted to bring this back, that you've got a list going on of when you notice your mouth breathing, that you can, begin to kind of track those habits. I suggested that in the beginning, that you just make a list for yourself of when I notice my mouth, I use my mouth for breathing, so that when you begin to do that activity, when you're using your mouth, when you're doing that activity that traditionally you did it with your mouth open, like Cheryl's going to put on her list right now, when she's carrying water from the reservoir to the house, that's when she mouth breathes. So as soon as she starts to get the bucket in her hand, she's going to go, this is where I need to keep my mouth closed. And she's shaking her head. And she's agreeing. So anything like that becomes an obvious pattern now that you've tuned into the differences and what it can do, you'll start to make those corrections, because that's the only way to change a habit, is to be aware of it. So what this conversation is about the Bohr effect. And this is really readily available everywhere on the internet. The Bohr effect is a scientific principle. It's not a theory. It's a principle. The difference between a theory and a principle is the theory is not proven, a principle is. And this principle of came about in 1904. So it's been around a little while. It's been proven. And it was created by Christian Bohr. So those of you who are physicists, Christian Bohr was Niels Bohr's father. And Niels Bohr, of course, won the Nobel Prize, and so did Christian for this as well. So pretty intelligent family. Basically what they said, when carbon dioxide levels lower, less oxygen is delivered to the tissues or to the cells. So carbon dioxide, what it does, and I'll go on to the next slide. So triggers can cause hyperventilation or mouth breathing. Basically, you get frightened. You're triggered by something that goes along in your life. Somebody comes into your family or something. Anything that triggers you, the smoke triggers you, and it causes a little bit of a panic, and you go back to the habit of mouth breathing. And so it causes low carbon dioxide levels and what's known as respiratory alkalosis. And what's going on here basically is the blood pH has to stay within a narrow range to maintain life. So blood pH, let me just go over here. This is a scale of alkaline to acid scale or acidic to base. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not. But every fluid in the body and every tissue in the body has a pH to it. Your stomach pH on any given day can be 2.5 to 5. So the pH scale is 0 to 14. 7 is neutral. Every number below 7 is acidic. So if I have a tissue that goes from 7 to 6, it's 10 times more acidic when it goes to 6. It's like the Richter scale for earthquakes. Every jump of a full number is a 10-fold increase in the intensity of that thing. Stomach acid can be anywhere from 2.5 to 5. So let's round down to 2. So when stomach acid is traveling down the scale, when it goes from 5 to 4, it's 10 times more acidic. When it goes from 4 to 3, it's now 100 times more acidic. When it goes to 2, it's now 1,000 times more acidic. The stomach has no problem with that. That's its range. When it goes up from 2 to 3, it's becoming 10 times less acidic or back to 100, and so 4 up. So everyone's an increase. Same going in the other direction. Okay, so if it goes up the scale, it's becoming more alkaline. So neutral, so the skin is 5.2, by the way, so that's very acidic, so it kills bacteria. Blood is 7.35 to 7.45. That's its tolerance. Unlike the stomach, that's its tolerance. So what is it that keeps it from 7.35 to 7.45? The blood has in it buffers that if a strong acid comes in to the blood from food, it will be buffered to neutralize it. If a strong alkaline comes in from food, it'll have a buffer that will neutralize it. Those buffers are made from carbon. One is bicarbonate, the other is carbonic acid. Where the carbon comes from is from your breathing. The byproduct of your breath when it hits the cell is carbon dioxide and water when a cell is breathing well. That carbon dioxide becomes the buffer in your blood to keep the blood at neutral. When the blood is at neutral, then oxygen that's in the hemoglobin will flow freely out of the blood and into the cells and back, carbon dioxide back and forth. There's no inhibition to the flow of oxygen, and so you are fully oxygenated, which is an incredible relief into the cell to have all the oxygen it needs to make the energy it needs to run your body's metabolic process. When you overbreathe and you give off more carbon dioxide than you need to and are supposed to retain, your blood pH starts to go a little alkaline. And that's what's called respiratory alkalosis down here. And the reason being is because the carbon that usually is made from the carbon dioxide is not present in the blood, so the body has a difficult time making the buffer that would buffer a strong alkaline, which is carbonic acid. So there's too much bicarbonate. I know this is confusing, but basically saying that when you give off too much carbon dioxide, oxygen does not flow freely from the blood to the cells. So you can put a pulse oximeter on and you can have totally saturated blood, but is it moving from the blood to the cells? That's dependent upon carbon dioxide, and carbon dioxide is dependent upon how you breathe.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Per, please.
Does it cause changes in the membrane to move things through? Is that the mechanism that it works in, or?
I actually think of it this way. The scientific science calls it a sticky bond. The hemoglobin and the oxygen develop a sticky bond. It changes the binary of plus and minus in the chemistry. And so the oxygen can't get off the hemoglobin.
Okay.
Another way of saying it is you got a fire outside your house and you're trying to get out the front door, but the fire is in the front of the house. The atmosphere for you to go in is not conditioned properly. It's the same thing here. The oxygen can't go into alkaline blood.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, hope that's clear. It's probably clear as mud at the moment. It's a big conversation. So what happens when we hyperventilate or we overbreathe? So the airways cool down, they dry out, and they become irritated and inflamed as carbon dioxide levels drop, which also will make more mucus, because once they're inflamed, the mucus production is going to increase to try to cool the air, and not cool them, but to soothe the airways inflammation. So in your nervous system, you will start to feel twitching, irritable, poor sleep, anxiety, apprehension, and restless legs, just to name a few. This is what happens when your body, just think of it as the simplest way of thinking about this. Your cells are starving. These are the signals they're sending up to let you know something's off with my breathing. It's not like I can't settle down somehow. I'm not getting what I need inside. So like for children who have asthma, for instance, when they're babies pre-verbally, let's say, when they're getting into their asthma frequency, they start to behave really badly for 2 or 3 days. So they're irritable in their lungs, but they can't express it to you because they can't speak. So the behavior expresses it. They become irritable and uncontrolled. And so that's what we feel like, whether we're we're not a baby, but we just don't understand. We're just feeling uncomfortable in our nervous system. Extra histamine is produced when that happens, which means you're going to be itching, swelling, redness, leaky blood vessels, increased mucus, and spasming of the smooth muscle. So rashes sometimes are indications of undernourished skin cells. And so this is allergies right here. This is the immune system not being able to cope with generalized things in the air that some people can deal with really easily and other people have a really difficult time with. Why? It's because probably the breathing pattern is upsetting the immune system, causing it to produce extra histamines, and therefore you have an allergic response. Because it doesn't trust what's in the air. It's on hyper alert and it's trying to protect against everything and anything. The smooth muscle, which is your organ body, narrow, causing difficulty in breathing, rapid pulse, cold hands, tingling, and numbness. This is in the airways themselves. This is what shortness of breath is going to start to feel like. If it's not heart related, then you're not going to be able to get enough air and you can't breathe out mostly, can't get a good exhale going. So you're going to start to be in fight or flight. And in your breathing, less oxygen is delivered to the tissue cells, causing panic. Cells are sending up signals that says, we don't have enough air, dizziness, extreme tiredness and fatigue, and a sense of, I can't get enough air. It's not that you can't get enough air, it's the cells can't get enough air. And so you feel air hungry. So the The remedy is you start to take bigger and bigger breaths. You think taking a big breath's going to be the answer, but it's not the answer. It's slowing down the breathing, giving your body a chance to rebalance the chemistry and the chemical axis, which is the balance of the carbon dioxide and oxygen and the pH of the blood, so that transfer will be efficient. Yeah, Carol, unmute yourself, Carol.
Can you talk a little bit about the pain? You've got pain on that slide.
I do have pain on that slide, don't I? Pain. So if I say to you, less oxygen is moving to the cells, then the cells will, the definition of a lack of oxygen into the tissue is the word for it is ischemia. And ischemia is a tightening. So pain is an incredible contraction from a lack of oxygen. Not one like you got hurt and you got, you caught your hand in a car door or something like that. But these muscle aches, these bone aches are long-term starvation issues into the tissues. And so when they start to get fed, then they lighten up.
I notice if I do chest breathing, I have quite a bit of pain in the left lung that was damaged. If I breathe the way you've taught us, the pain goes away. And so is that associated with that?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, it must be. Well, I got damaged too, so I'm wondering about, the breathing does to that lobe, but yeah.
Yeah, well, you have scar tissue, and it tightens up. I mean, I can't say exactly what is going on, but you gave yourself your answer yourself. When there's movement and oxygen supplied to it, because the tissue, you're breathing more slowly, the pain dissipates. Mm-hmm. So, it's a good one. I was going to do this later, but let's do it now, because I think it's an important thing to do. Because you have to remember also pain, two things that are happening there for you, Carol. One is that you can no longer characterize yourself as being in constant pain. That's that's a big piece for all of us psychologically, to go, wait a minute, I have this identity that I'm always in pain. But when you start to find relief, you can't hold on to that identity anymore. That pain is a process. That sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there. What's going on circumstance-wise, context-wise, that's putting me in that condition right now. And if I flip that back to something that I know soothes my nervous system, like in my internal life of my breath, and the pain goes away, now I've got some skill. And I can't hold on to that as an identity anymore. People do hold on to their pain as an identity. I had a wonderful elderly woman in a class I taught in Pateco many years ago in Tucson, and she was feeling such relief from her asthma, and she got up and started crying and said, "I have to leave." And people asked her, why do you have to leave? And she said, and she was in a nursing home, and the nurse happened to be with her. And she said, well, if I don't have my asthma, they'll throw me out of the nursing home. So I don't want to get better. And the nurse, of course, reassured her, no, we're not going to throw you out of the nursing home. But, it's like it was a very important anchor for her asthma. So, yeah. So let's just do this. Let's just go back into the interior world for a minute. I'll take the screen sharing off so we have a full screen of me here. And then we'll come back to oops, I lost you all. So just taking a moment. This is really, it's about awareness and following breath into movement. And so we're going to just shortcut it a little bit. Just the first thing you want to do is just kind of follow that exhale into gravity, so that you're tuning your ability to be able to let your awareness land on a sensation, the sensation of support, and breathe with that sensation of support. Just to kind of 3 or 4 breaths, just to see that you can track that when you are aware of something, of a part of you, that when you breathe in, movement shows up. And remember, movement is a nourishment. And then on your exhale, as you keep going along this, as you go to the bottom of your exhale, just notice any sensation that arises, that your body sends up a signal that says, notice me here. It can be anywhere in your body. And then keep that place in your awareness as you breathe in, and watch what happens to the movement there. You're focused on a place that sensation brought you to in your body. You're breathing with that sensation. Feel what happens in movement. And then as you breathe out again, see, am I interested in the same place, or is there someplace else in my body that is calling for my attention? Or I can check into the last place and see, does the dynamic, the tensional dynamic, has it changed because I breathe with an area? Is it still the same in that part of my body? Or pick a new place. Now pick a place that you chronically feel not comfortable in, a place where you have pain. Bring that in place into your awareness and breathe with that location in your awareness. And do it a couple of times so that you can track if there's any shifting in the way you experience that place that you've called painful. And you can ask your body to breathe in a way that touches that place in a kindness, in the way that place would love to be touched to soothe it. And you can rotate around if you want to another place, or maybe you're drawn to another place because we don't know the indirect pathway that's going to help soothe something. But we trust that our body's going to call our attention to where it's needed. And if you've moved away from the painful place after a couple of breaths, go back to that painful place and see what the dynamic is there now. And you can help yourself accentuate your awareness into a certain area by either generalizing, we'll just use a hum right now. You can make a hum, feel the vibration, and breathe with where you feel the vibration. Or you can put your hand on the painful place and hum and put the hum and pain right in that location. And keep your hand there and breathe with it. Again, it's the movement that is the nourishment, because you can trust that if it's moving, it's also receiving oxygen. keep going with what you're doing. Just hear my words. As an overview, if your body is waking up in movement in different locations, just start to feel whether you don't have a more global feeling of your whole body being engaged with movement as you breathe. You're being specific in your awareness and a side glance at the globality of your body. And if a different kind of sound appeals to you other than the hum, something more organic from your need, put that sound in. Sound can soften tissue and make it a little more permeable. Permeability allows more breath. And you might want to think about like letting the breath that's moving into those areas spread out beyond your body. Breath is really boundless in us. There is really no edge to it when we breathe in. Just letting that distribution of difficulties spread out beyond the body. And perhaps on the exhale, that place of difficulty can come to some rest. Support this process by letting your lips be in the kiss. And letting your eyes rest in the bones so that all lower body knows that it needs to relax to support the release from the upper body. And at some point here, you want to drop yourself into open attention where you've done the work. There's no hurry. We got a few more minutes here, but if it feels like you want to take a rest from this, just let your attention go wide and open. Just sitting comfortably in the respiratory process and noticing any new information that may be coming through. Being states. And we'll take about 2 more minutes here. So checking back into some locations perhaps that you started with, seeing what the texture and movement is like in those areas. Making some assessment about your ability to support your health by being able to be aware of a part of yourself and helping it breathe with more ease as a way of softening a long-term difficult problem. That you're building a skill here to be able to touch into yourself in gentle ways and specific ways. And finding a way to come back to a more attentive to the screen, perhaps, and to my voice, going back in and maybe touch, smell, sound, and visual. All right. So I'm curious to know if, if that's worked for you, if it feels like you were able to move some energy that would perhaps stuck and was called painful, and we're able to dial down the abstraction of the word pain to a more direct experience of the qualities that are inside of the abstraction of pain, like tightness or sharp or hot or cold, which are more direct experiences, which help you tease out and move with what has been difficult. So I'm curious if anybody wants to report on any of that. Yeah, sure, Joanne.
Yeah, I loved that. I felt like it was my form of purring or something. I've always kind of been a little envious of my cats because that purring sound is such a beautiful vibration. And I know it's comforting for them in times of pleasure and in times of pain. That sometimes cats will purr when they're in pain because the vibration is very calming for them. And I was laying down on the floor and I start doing the humming, and my one cat just kept rubbing all over my. I'm like, okay, this is my time. But it was super fun, and I really enjoyed being able to direct the breath, the hum, into the spot where I was having discomfort. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm amazed when I sort of, like you said, going into a place and just having the intention that I'm going to treat myself kindly. And the body, it's working in both directions. The breath knows how to touch gently, and the body itself knows exactly what it needs so that it can send that signal to the respiratory system to give it that kind of touch. It's a great partnership. Cheryl? Thanks, Joanne.
Okay. Am I unmuted? Okay.
You are muted.
That was amazing. That was amazing. I felt like when I first started, like just checking in with different parts of my body, it was like ping, ping, ping. All these areas wanted attention, and it was a different sensation. One was maybe a little bothersome knee, and the other one was like a little itch on my head and in my eye. So like it was like my whole body was going, hey, you're paying attention, we're here, like all these places, which was really fun. So I can identify with what the former woman was saying, Joanne. And then when you talked about directing it towards a source of pain, I have several places on my back that have pain, and for different reasons. And so I was paying attention to what you were saying about the humming, and if you're actually moving, then don't worry, oxygen's getting there. So I thought, oh, well, that lower area is moving, so I'm getting oxygen there. And then I felt up in my neck, and I panicked at first because I thought there's no movement at all. So then I remembered about, I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time, but it was so exciting to feel this. When you walked us through the kiss, I was able to loosen my jaw, because in order to make my lips just touch just that slight barrier of liquid, I had to open my jaw, which loosened everything in my throat and neck. So I thought, okay, that's the key. I really focused on the kiss and humming and trying to feel where my hum was going into my neck. And all of a sudden, a little vertebrae popped. It was like, that's never happened before. And I realizing my neck, I carry so much tension in my neck and my jaw. This is it's huge for me. So thank you.
Sure, we bury a lot of stuff in our bones, that's for sure. That's the deepest place we can go. We're wet bodies. I mean, the computer world has, that's what they call humans. Hardware, software, wetware. I think I said this before. We're the wetware. And so the more fluid we become, the more we're in touch with our fluid, which is why the kiss is so nice, because it just totally sends a signal to the entire body. Oh, we're all fluid. Let's live in the fluid dynamic. Well, then there's all that movement of like water. It's not, we're not moving in the rigidified, dried out, desert of our body. We're living in the fluid ocean of ourselves. And so it's much healthier place to live. And breath is a wave and it's filled with water. Yeah, Lucia. No.
Yeah.
Oh, you go.
See,
All right, I'm going to trust you now.
I love the whole kiss. That was great. I noticed that I call things discomfort, and I've been trained that way. So I thought, I'm not in pain. And I thought, oh yeah, that's what I said when I had to have my hips replaced, you know. I said, pain is when you're screaming, right? Anyway, I definitely stoic. And then I began to notice places that were uncomfortable, but they were not my definition of pain. So maybe I have a high threshold, or maybe it's my training.
No, I think the context of America is very, and the world is very difficult. We have been quietly had the dial turned up on what we can tolerate. And so we have learned the very skill that most of us have really honed is endurance.
Mm-hmm.
We endure, we endure, we endure. And because there's no escape. And so this is a revolutionary act to say, no, I'm not going to endure. I'm going to find my own fluidity. I'm going to find my own comfort, and find out that these things that I call discomfort and pain are just really a belief about the accumulation of the very various sensations that are not pleasant to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, you know, okay, well, I'll endure that one. I'll endure that one. But what's underneath there is sensations, you know, tightness, cold, heat, sharp, soft, all of these different ways that we experience ourselves, that when we have enough of them, we say, oh, it's all just painful. Well, no, it's, you know, and when we start to move with each one of the qualities of it, then it turns the temperature down on the pain dial. Because really what all of those things are, and it's just really the simplest way, and why I do this particular class, is all of us, whether you're a loner or whether you're somebody who craves to be in relationship with somebody, the biggest nourishment that we have is to be intimate. Because what intimate means that we are being met in our true selves with nothing hidden. And so in this gestalt of pain, the sensations that are sending up are inviting, please meet me here so that we can be intimate in this experience, so there's a possibility of something other than what's going on right now. Because the intimacy, when we get met by someone, a loved one, or by ourselves in a meditation or wherever it is, you can tell immediately when we get intimate, there's a relaxation in the system. We just want to be seen. Whether we think we do or we don't want to have pretense. We don't want to have hiding. All of those are personas that get added on. So this internal world of meeting ourselves in these little sensations are the development of intimacy with ourselves, and an access to that intimacy that can settle our nervous system.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Josh.
Thank you so much, Robert. This was actually a really difficult and powerful experience, because what I've discovered in, you know, being with this ghost for the last 6-7 months, which, by the way, just as a side note to you, Bear is taking me under her wing, and she actually talked to COVID last week with me, and she made me change the word from ghost to wind, but she saw it. It's a wind. COVID is a wind, and it continues to circle the energy body long after it's biologically left the building, so to speak. And one of the imprints of that, which I experienced in the body's sort of innate desire to get more, whatever it was trying to get, were like these really long, unforced inhalations. But then all of a sudden, I was like leaving the building. Like I felt the heart rate go up. I felt the temperature rising, so to speak. And this was just sort of automatic. And I was like, drop. And beautifully, you moments after that invited us into open attention. And what I discovered in the process was when I really sort of really let go, and actually my attention was drawn really just to the opening, the nostril, just like the sort of very small, like instinctively based on whatever context I've evolved in, was like, okay, get, really small. And then I was no longer, because I mean, the thing that everyone's reporting with this is like the asthma thing, the long COVID thing. They can't exhale. Like exhalation has become like impossible. And that was my experience this morning. And but then when that, then what arrives is what I've started to call sort of like a more pranic breathing, where it's not your, I mean, it is your lungs, but it's not your organs and your muscles and all this work and labor. There's this sort of like, I think you summing it up in the name of intimacy is really beautiful. There's just like this intimate dance with this subtle something. And then the body does sort of relax. And then like I'm back to business and it's like, okay. So there's this interesting translation of actually reorchestrating context.
Well, what do you think the virus actually has done? I mean, you just have to take a look at the flip side of it, of the behavior of the people that it's been inhabiting. What did it do? The first thing it did was clean the air. It said, this is ridiculous. Wait, the air is terrible in the whole world. Let's just clean that up. 3 weeks, gone. Samina may speak to this. People in India could see the Himalayas for the first time in 3 decades. China had no pollution over the whole country, which is the most polluted country in the world. Is that a signal? And what did the virus do to make that happen? It slowed everybody down. And what does everybody say is wrong with the world? We're all moving too fast. We have this little device here that says we're on call 24/7. There is no Sunday involved in a cell phone for in the work world. So the virus just said, your lifestyle just isn't really working. And it is just stopped everything. So that's, if we take that lesson and say, great, well, let me follow that lesson and let's just slow down. Let's just do what Josh did. Let's get intimate with ourselves. Let's just not do the things that we've been programmed to do for whatever reason, but we can make up all kinds of reasons. It's brilliant. And this virus, I mean, I've been taking a class from MIT. This virus is so intelligent because it says, I'm going to stay around until you figure out how to do this, because most viruses mutate. And when they mutate, they get weaker. This virus has in its program a protein that corrects any mutation. So it keeps its original strength. And until we figure out what to do, it's going to keep coming at us. It's brilliant, this virus, in that way. I'm sorry you suffer so much from it, Josh, of course. And all the other ones, 200,000, millions of people have died, and 200,000 in the United States. But it's a messenger. It's clearly a messenger. And so what we're doing here is working with the message. Slow down, be intimate with yourself, and know what's really working for you. Okay, without getting too political here, Ruth.
No, I find that I have trouble getting a long exhale. And the time that I find that I breathe through my mouth is my nose is kind of flat where my glasses sit, so they tend to slide down, and then it obstructs my nose. So I'll be going around doing things, and all of a sudden I'll realize, I can't breathe through my nose. But I have trouble with getting long exhales. And after listening to Breathe, the book, I'm like, that's a problem.
Well, probably, I'm just listening to the language, Ruth, and this may be good for all of us. We don't want to get anything. No getting a long exhale. It's, can I allow an exhale to exist in me that has to be the length that it needs to be? And the reason I went to the gravity piece is because when I can let myself be into gravity on support, the tension is out so my body can exhale. It's tension that prevents the exhale. So just working with when I exhale, how can I rest down on my support? So when I breathe in, I just return to support. I'm just focusing on the support, not the exhale. No effort. The exhale is not meant to have any exhale in it at all. Nowhere in your body, in your nose, in your lungs, anywhere. If you're feeling you're pushing and forcing an exhale, you're working an exhale. It's not meant to be worked. It's meant to be a time when your body is returning to rest, and spirit is going back to the bigger sphere, and you're returning into a formless place, waiting for the next inhale. So you can't, if you're efforting at all to exhale, that's part of the problem, because you will tighten up. That's why the ha on the exhale is somewhat advantageous. It's because if I can just think it and feel the lungs just, using their elasticity to bring the air out. And also, I have to say, in terms of what Josh is saying, also carbon dioxide, besides being a regulator of the pH of the blood, is a bronchial and vasodilator. It opens the airways and it opens the bronchial and vasal blood vessels. So for asthmatics, that's the problem of not being able to breathe out. And when they learn this method, take it specifically, and they increase their CO2 levels, it softens the smooth muscles, so they can use their own breath to open up their airways. And so just watch where your efforting is, Ruth, in terms of trying to get an exhale, as opposed to allowing the exhale.
Well, the ha definitely helps, or if I do humming, it helps.
Good.
Or if I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth, I find I can get a longer exhale.
Yeah, but that's really counter to what your body needs, because if you open up your mouth to breathe out, you're giving up too much of the load of CO2, and now you can start to deoxygenate into your cells. So I hear the bit of dryness in your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to suggest to stay in the lips and stay in the gravity, and let yourself really rest down, and and allow the exhale. And don't concern yourself. If you really want to train it in a more mechanical way, you can go on your phone and get a breathing app that will regulate, I think it's called Breath. It'll regulate your exhale to, count of 6 and inhale to the count of 4. So there are devices you can do, but I just really think it's more about you learning to accept and allow your body to release.
Thank you.
Yeah, same with the inhale. Just you have to allow the inhale. I see a little bit at the end of your inhale, Ruth, when you just did that, of effort. And so like Josh is speaking to, as soon as the effort arises, that's the end of the inhale. Yeah, Joanne.
Yeah, I just wanted to say also, sometimes it's these simple things that really elude me. And I've been trying to practice humming sitting up, and I have discomfort sitting up after a little while. And this idea of humming laying down, I wouldn't have thought of that unless I was here with all of you. And I was thinking about that too, in terms of that breath book and what they say about the nitric oxide and humming.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what a cool thing. Yeah, thank you again.
You're welcome. Yeah, humming in the nitric oxide really also is a bronchial dilator and helps open up. It also kills viruses as well. We're going to see more about that in the years to come, how important that is. Okay. So let's take this one step further in the last 15 minutes we have. We have a class at 11, so we really have to end on time. But I want to share a screen with you. We'll do one more piece here today. Now, this is a two-dimensional picture, right? But this is the movement of breath in the head. 360 degrees in all directions. What? Really? Yeah. For those of you who get craniosacral, you know that the sutures in the brain move. The skull plates are always in movement. Well, they're in movement with every breath. And so when we think about Sa and Ha, remember, one of the things I said about Sa and Ha is that it starts to move up the nostrils, right? Is that it goes to the lower hole first. Let me see, I'll pull this picture up real quickly. Oops, again. Remember these three holes here, Sa and Ha. Sa starts at the lower nostril, fans up to the middle, and goes to the top hole in the nostrils, right? So when we breathe with Sa, at the end of the inhale, it's more in our head center. So I want you to kind of do the same thing we did in the other exercise. Imagine the inside of your skull sort of being almost hollow, if you will. And as you breathe in with Sa, see if you can track any movement in the skull in this global way of opening your head. And if you need a little more input to it, then hum up in there. And then follow that with breath. But what's it like to have your head open up? And what's it like to have your head come back to center? And don't try to get into the head again until you feel like you've really landed back in gravity, in support. And then focus, like Josh talked about, the entry to the nose, air to the nose, and the head being in response. That's all we're looking for, is a response inside the skull in movement. And what kind of nourishment does that bring? We'll ask that question over and over again. All of these things that we're directing ourselves to is to nourish those parts of ourselves. The movement as nourishment. And don't overwork it. You can stop for a moment, go back to open attention, just rest in your open field and to see how your head feels. What's the relationship of your head to the rest of your body now? What's the sense of presence you have for your head? These are where most of your senses are working anyway: smell, taste, touch, and visual. Not so much touch as all over, but smell and taste, sound, seeing. Just notice if you have a little more awareness of your head, and then go back and do it again. So you take a break, rest in the result. Do some of the things we did earlier. See if you can let your eyes rest in the sockets as you do this, so you're not overly tense in your eyes as you're trying to let your head be more responsive. Be in the kiss. Let the tongue kiss the roof of the mouth too. Just a swelling. Head being in the swell of movement. Tide of the in and the out. Okay, this is just a little rehearsal. This is your practice for the week. To play with deepening your sense of your head center and following your invitations from your body and sensation when they arise. Oh, let's see what breath wants, how breath wants to touch this place that's being invited in when I feel sensations here. So I've got a few minutes for comments if you have a chance, or questions if you want to have more. Or I wish I could give you more time for this, but we're running towards the end. So I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Yeah, Helen.
When I practice Zen, I get a set. It's like a buzz, and it's like even from the inside of my heel all the way up, and it's sort of like an excitement, but I don't know if it's shock.
Well, I wish I could tell you. I'm just not inside of you, so I don't know.
Yeah.
You'll have to kind of evaluate over time. And just the thing that I would do, of course, would be to bring that into your awareness and breathe with it.
With it.
Because it's always about breathing with. It's never about breathing into, because breathing with means that I'm meeting it for number one, and giving it breath by breathing with it gives it more life, so it becomes more awake to my consciousness. My consciousness that watches my consciousness is saying, oh, okay, I see this. I see what this is.
Mm-hmm.
When I breathe with something, it gets more life to it.
Thank you.
Yes. You like? Josh?
Just to continue, what came up when we were doing this, which sounds sort of like truistic or whatever, was patience. The thematic, the motif, the real like organismic motif of patience, and this whole thought train rolled in my head, and how like all the modern breathing practice pranayamas basically evolved in the last 100 years when the physical culture movement, like the Y, the missionaries went to India, and all of that is really like muscular organ. But if you look at the old Hatha yogas, which no one really talks about, which the Tibetans actually have more or less carried, it's all of it. It just brought into my mind because so much of it is about the sensitivity of just a natural breath. They force it, they push it in and out, but it's not like I'm going to contract this, drop this, do that, and the other thing.
No, it's
and
sensitivity. It's sensitivity. It's a good word for it.
And then what I find is like you start breathing, just not with your nose. Like you're participating. And I'm wondering if helping long haul COVID people, there's all this rehabilitation language. You know, they want to do this with me. And I was like, no, like, you know, I'll call Robert if I want to be rehab, which is really reminding ourselves to start tending to this. Anyway, I can go on.
That's the invitation. That's the invitation of the virus. That is the invitation. And doctors, like I said, knew very little about breathing. Just know about that. And you know, so if you want to go back a while and read the essay by Susan Sontag about the language of medicine, I mean, it's just brilliant. You know, the language of medicine is a war language. We're going to attack this. We're going to fight it. We're going to beat it. We're going to battle it. It's like, where are you going to go with that? Never going to win. We never win any wars. We're never going to win the war with our body either. That's not where we're headed. So great. We'll play with some more centers next time. And love your comments if you want to write to me or ask questions. So I got about 2 more minutes here. Anything else? Thank you, Josh.
Robert, can you talk about the class, the Buteyko class?
Yes, I can, Ruth. And I just want to say that that word that Josh brought in about patience, that's what you want in your exhale. Just be patient for it to do what it needs to do. Yeah, the Buteyko class is going to start in the beginning of October, 5 weeks. It's going to be an hour and a half to 2 hours for 5 consecutive weeks. And it will go through the Buteyko practices, which are not that different from here, the way I teach them, but also really being able to measure your breathing health with some of the skills that they do. It's a very a structured program. And so the flyer is going to come out tomorrow, I think. Right, Cheryl?
It came out at 10 o'clock today.
Oh, today. Okay. Very good. All right. Cheryl does my artwork. Thank you, Cheryl. And so, and you can read more about it on my website, but it really is it is more what Josh is about, teaching you how to rehabilitate your breathing in a much more structured way for people who have asthma and have really difficult time breathing, emphysema, COPD. Corey got some of that education for herself, right? Yeah. And so did Wynn, who disappeared, who has severe asthma and is in the hospital all the time. And she took that class. That's why she keeps raving about it, because it's kept her out of the hospital for a year now. She was in the hospital all the time. It's a really good program. And I teach it with a lot of this interior work as well, because you have to really be able to embody the practice. I hope that answers the question. If you want to read the website, there's more description on it on the website, Ruth. But I think it'd be good for you, yes. And we can talk aside, Ruth, and give me a call and we can talk more about it, how I think it would work for you. All right. Sylvia's getting tired.
No, I'm so happy with the exploration we just did that my head just relaxed and something popped like really deep. So I'm just like, landing.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sylvia. How's things in Mexico? You got air down there you can breathe? I know the smoke traveled down that way.
So far, so good. It's nice.
Oh, good. All right, everybody. Thank you for today. It was great to be with you and see you all. And I'll see you next Saturday. And if anyone wants to join me at 11, we're teaching a workshop on tending your well-being during these times. We're doing a little more continuum-oriented class with dives, long dives for an hour or so to be embodied. That starts at 11. Not too late to sign on, but it's just an invitation. All right, great, everybody. Write me if you have any questions, or even get in touch by phone call. It'd be fabulous. I'll send you the recordings of this, and probably and the slides as well. So you'll have the slides, and there'll be slides in there you haven't seen yet. So that's some preview of things to come.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, and by the way, it's Joanne who's instigated the Buteyko class. So thank you, Joanne, for saying let's do a Buteyko class, and so we're going to do it.
I'm super excited. So, yay! Thank you.
All right. Adios, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, didn't. Okay.